Hey all, welcome to Parker's Reefs. On today's episode, we're going to talk about, it's a new year, what am I going to do with the Dream Reef Tank in 2025? Alright, thank you for joining me on yet another episode of Parker's Reefs. And as touched on in the intro, New Year's has come and gone. We are now living in 2025. And one thing I have learned in reefing is that if you're not moving forward, you are absolutely going backwards. So how does that apply to my Dream Reef Tank here? What are some of the things I'm going to change throughout this year on the Dream Reef Tank? And today I thought I'd break the video up into three separate components. First and foremost, well, maybe not foremost, but firstly, we'll cover the things I have recently changed in the Dream Reef Tank. Then we'll talk about some things that I absolutely will change in the short-term future. And then lastly, we'll have a look at some of the things that I want to change, but I haven't quite pulled the trigger on yet. And hopefully we can see this Dream Reef Tank continue on as it is now entering into its 5th year of operation. I want to see it continue on for another 5 or 10 years from there. So making sure I stay on top of things and keeping it operating at its optimum level is going to be super, super critical. So kicking things off with some things that I have recently changed and may or may not have documented right here on this channel. Firstly, I have made the switch to this here, the Triton Core 7 Flex, the range of dosing products from the team at Triton. Now the Triton Core 7 Flex is an interesting product from the guys up at Triton Labs. It is a dosing program which combines your major elements like alkalinity, calcium and magnesium with some of your major trace elements like potassium, bromine and I believe iodine and a few other elements in there as well. It's all based off the ability of the chemicals you can mix together and you cannot mix together, and they've worked out the ratios so you loosely dose them at even values for the number of different solutions you mix up, which does pose the next interesting factor of the Triton Core 7 Flex. The name Flex, as it would imply, gives you the choice to make. You can make a 2-part solution, a 3-part solution, or a 4-part solution. The more solutions you make, it gives you a little bit more flexibility on if you need to dose individual elements to get your parameters spot on. But the idea is that you dose them all equally anyway. Now, the 4-part solution really kind of is the 3-part solution. It just gives you double the alkalinity solutions. But for me and my reef tank, I've actually gone that method and I've utilized that to dose extra alkalinity at night. I have discovered through my Mastertronic Pro that my reef tank has actually been lowering its alkalinity at night when the lights are off, which is super, super interesting. I'm not sure if it sort of just absorbs all the photons during the photo period, and then when the lights go off, it actually converts that into growing its skeleton. I'm not going to profess to know the molecular science behind that, but what I can tell you is my alkalinity has been lower at night than it has been during the day. So in my ever consistent chase of getting rid of spikes and trying to make things as consistent as I can in my reef tank, I'm using those 2 alkalinity solutions to do some things to try and smooth that out. The first alkalinity solution doses just 24 hours throughout the day as it always has done on this reef tank before, splitting out that dosage into 24 equal parts and doing it on the hour every hour. The second alkalinity solution I am dosing just at night, in fact just when the lights are out, to try and keep the alkalinity up when the tank is consuming it. And so far it has worked wonders in reducing those spikes between day and night. I'm starting to get a much smoother curve, which was the aim of the game there. Whether it actually makes a difference to the reef or not is anyone's guess, but as far as I'm concerned, it can't hurt. Now, I do need to just jump in there and say there is absolutely nothing wrong with any of the other dosing regimes or products that I've used before. I wanted to give the Triton Core 7 Flex a shot, and I do like the idea of dosing those major trace elements in accordance with the consumption of my alkalinity, and it has worked really well. I can set it up on the dosing machine and just let it run. I will obviously do Triton ICP tests every 2 or 3 months just to make sure that everything is keeping in track, do any correctional dosages that I need to do to get things back in line again, and then let the system run. I have discovered over the last few months in switching jobs, and of course, being a full-time job, running a YouTube channel, having a young family, and of course helping out at my local fish shop on Saturdays, the time is a slightly precious resource. So anything I can do to minimize time spent at the tank on things that I don't really want to do is time well spent for me. Now, I should say that does not mean I've switched the Dream Reef Tank to a full Triton method. People often think of Triton method meaning no water changes, massive refugiums, frequent ICPs, and then I guess when I think about it, I'm slowly getting towards that full Triton method. I have temporarily switched off my auto water change system more as an experiment than anything. I just wanted to see how things go without water changes, and as a result, I have increased the photo period of my refugium just to make sure that I'm getting enough nutrient export. And I can say the Kessel A360 Refugium light has been pumping out the keto in my fusion, doing a good job at keeping those nutrients fairly low. Now I say fairly low, my phosphates have been hovering around the 0.2 ppm mark, which is up a little bit higher than I normally run things at. And my nitrates have probably been hovering around the 5 to 7 ppm mark, which I'm more than happy with. And all of that has been without the need to run GFO. I do still have some GFO in there, but it should have been replaced about a month and a half ago. Not topping up my GFO, and also not doing auto water changes. And if you can recall on this system before, when I have done some other experiments, I did try some things like doing auto water changes with double salinity water. So water coming in at 1.052 specific gravity, only taking water out at 1.026 specific gravity, which creates a deficit, which allowed me to run extra kalkwasser. Now, I have long said that is not a program or a recommendation that I would make to anyone. I ran it for a while to see if I could make any noticeable difference in my pH, and I've got to say, it probably did make a little difference on the pH, but it really did sort of complicate things. I'd need to monitor salinity as well as alkalinity and calcium, and if I adjusted that kalkwasser, I need to be mindful of the other items as well. So it really overcomplicated things. I'm not as concerned about the pH now, so I've brought that kalkwasser back to a standard dosage just to replace the water that's evaporating from this system, and I have turned the auto water change off for now. I have not ripped the plumbing out or anything like that because I am still a big fan of water changes, particularly when I have good access to high quality natural salt water that I get locally from a champion here in Geelong, Bruce. So I'm definitely not turning my back on auto water changes, but just for the foreseeable future, I'm gonna try and run the tank without any water changes just to see if I can really get stability in with a lot of these trace elements. All right, one more hardware change before I talk about a couple of changes inside the glass box. Long-time viewers of the channel may recall that I have removed a couple of Kessels off the front of this tank. I do still have my 3 Philips coral cares. I have completely removed the Orfec OR3 light bars that I was not a fan of at all. I do still have my 2 Kessel A500X on there, and I do still have 2 of the A360X at the end, but I have removed 3 more of those A360Xs off the front of this light frame and have fitted up 2 of these AI blades, which I absolutely love. They put out such a beautiful light, very high quality light, such a nice slimline fixture, very reasonably priced. I don't want to say cheap, but in my opinion, reasonably priced. They're just a great light. They give really good color. The corals respond well to them. They're adjustable, tunable, high quality, very, very impressed. Now, I'm kind of sneaking to one of the things that I will do in the short-term future, other than just something that I've already done. Obviously, I have already added these 2 AI blades on the front here, and I want to get a massive thank you to Aaron over in the States who made it possible for me to get more of those lockline fixtures to fit them up to my tank. So thank you very much, Aaron. I highly appreciate it. I do want to add some of the AI blade glows to this system, and I do have a couple of voids there where the Orfec OR3 bars were going from front to back of the tank. I must admit, when the AI blades first came out, I was not impressed at all with the glow. It put out a pretty ugly looking color. However, my local fish shop has convinced me by showing me how nice they look in combination with the AI blade grows. So the blue or the full spectrum light that I've got on the front of the tank here, when you have more of those than you have of the glows, they actually look pretty good together. So I'm pretty keen on trying that out in the short-term future, just saving up a couple of dollars, and then I'll put at least 2, one there and one there, but I'm tempted to go another one on the end here and another one on the end here, just to really get that full AI blade glow experience and see how they look. I could also, if I really wanted to go back into my mad scientist or mad lighting rig phase, run another 2 of the AI blades at the back of the Philips coral cares, but One, I don't need the light. The power I'm getting in this tank is ridiculous as is. But two, I actually really like the placement of these blades on the front here because I'm using them as a light shield or a shade, I guess I could say, by putting them right up against the edge of the Phillips coral cares and putting them on a 45-degree angle. It actually blocks a lot of the light getting into my eyes just behind the camera there when I sit down on the couch. In summer, like we are here at the moment in Australia, this tank gets reasonably warm. In fact, our nation gets reasonably warm, so I do like to try and leave the hood open and the fan on so that the aircon can help cool the tank, just to take a little bit of the load off the chiller. And the last thing you want to do is when you're sitting on the couch watching a movie or a show is basically be blinded by the lights in your tank. So having these guys here on the front as a light shade works really, really well. If I put some on the back, I'd likely angle them on that same 45, and I think that would kind of shine straight into my eyes. So probably just some more glows at this stage on the plans, but you never know. You know what I'm like with lighting. I see it. If I got room for it above my tank, I'll put them on there. If I've got budget, of course. But so far, I'm really, really happy with the lights on this tank at the moment. And I think the tank's responding really, really well. All right, now last up on the things that I have changed on this tank, and I guess it kind of blends between the two because it's something I have done and something that I will be doing tomorrow actually, and that is removing these guys, the Australian stripies. I have seen these guys now munching away on corals. To be precise, hammers down here, you can see my poor yellow hammer here has lost a head, and this fairly common modelled hammer down the front here has been pretty well munched away. Now, to be fair, I did also see my beautiful up there, my hybrid Angel Prius. He was munching on them as well. However, I will state right here, right now, Prius is not leaving this tank. If he decides overnight he's going to eat every coral in sight, guess what? This becomes a fish-only system. However, I have no such emotional attachment to the stripies. I long agreed when I put them into the tank that if they do start to nip on corals, they will be removed. So I had 3 in this system and I got them as tiny little 5-cent coin size guys. They did a fantastic job at eliminating Aiptasia in this system. Well, mostly eliminating Aiptasia in this system, definitely keeping it at bay. But I did catch 2 of the bigger guys down here just happily munching away on this hammer right in front of me. Thankfully, I do find Australian stripies to be the easiest fish in the world to net out. I sprinkled a couple of pellets up here and literally scooped both of them out in one go. I left this guy in here just to see if he was gonna nip at the hammer as well, and he didn't show any interest in it for about 2 or 3 days. And last night I saw him just going down there, having a bit of a look at what's remained of that hammer. So I dare say he'll go as well. I might replace the 3 of those with just 1 juvenile stripey because those 3 guys did a fantastic job at getting the outbreak under control. Now, the outbreak happened because I had 1 stripey in there before that I was questioning if he was eating coral, so I took him out, and then over the course of the next 6 to 8 weeks, Aiptasia exploded in my tank. So I put 3 babies in to bring that back down. They've done their job. They have got that under control, got those Aiptasias out of there. So I'll just ease back into it with 1 juvenile, and hopefully he'll keep them at bay and hopefully not touch my corals any more than these guys already have. All right, next up on things that I will be doing in the short-term future to the Dream Reef Tank, and that is adding this here, the Reef Pure RO Flush Kit. I was fortunate enough to catch up with Daniel up at the Reeftopia first birthday party and was chatting to him there about my RODI setup and how I have it set to automatically turn on and off to fill the reservoir in this sump, which to be fair is quite small. I think it's about a 12-litre reservoir. Now, depending on the time of the year, that reservoir can completely empty at least once a day. So my RO unit's been turning on and off fairly frequently. Now, just to ensure everyone's on the same page here, my RO unit is set to only turn on when the reservoir is completely empty, stays on all the way up until it's completely full, then turns off. But when you've only got about a 12-litre reservoir, and I was running double Kalkwasser in this system, I was churning through that RODI fairly quickly. And in my opinion, I was burning through membranes a little bit quicker than I would like. Bearing in mind that my TDS from my town water here is actually quite low. It comes into the system at about 60 TDS, which is really pretty good. So I expect a long life out of my membranes and of course my pre-filters. Now, I was just talking to Daniel saying, look, I'm running a little bit extra DI resin than I probably need to because I do notice my membranes creeping up to let water through at about 10 to 12 TDS, which is higher than I want. Puts a fair load on the DI membrane. Now, we walked through the scenario that I have with it turning on multiple times a day, and he said that this should do the job perfectly. It is a flush valve upgrade kit, and basically all I need to do is every 2-3 months or so, when the RO unit turns on, turn this tap. It will back flush any sort of contaminants out of the membrane, get it as good as it possibly can, and then I can turn it back, and it should get me much more life out of my membrane, particularly considering the TDS that's going in, and mostly because of the way I've set the system up to turn on and off. It will only sort of run for maybe an hour or two at a time, turn off, and then about 10 hours later it might run for an hour or two again, so it's pretty hard on the membrane. This should fix that problem, and I've got to give a massive shout out to the guys at Reef Pure RO. They are the absolute experts in this field, and I cannot tell you how valuable it is to have reefers that work in the industry that can give you advice like this, knowing precisely what we're talking about. Far too often, whether it be extruded aluminium, whether it be electricity, battery backups, anything that's sort of related to your fish tank, but you're relying on an outside source, they just don't get our aquarium needs, where Daniel and the guys at Reef Pure RO know exactly what we want, and he was able to sort me out with this. I cannot thank him enough. Thank you. All right, next up on the things that I am doing very soon to this Dream Reef Tank, and I'm waiting any day now for the Mastertronic Essential to come out. That is the latest and greatest in automated reef tank testers. It does the 5 key elements. So you've got alkalinity, calcium, magnesium, nitrate, and phosphate, as well as water clarity, all in one machine, all automated. And I cannot wait to get this on this tank. And absolutely at this current point in time, when I'm switching across to the Triton dosing system here, it's really going to help me dial that in and see if there are any other patterns like I see with my alkalinity where it was getting consumed more at night. I'm really keen to see things like calcium, how that's responding, how that interacts with alkalinity. Obviously things like nitrates and phosphates, I might be able to dial my refugium light in around the time when the tank's producing the most waste. It's really going to be an overload of data, which I do need to make a point of here. When you are looking at data, don't get too caught up in it. Don't be too reactive. Look at trends, make very slow and steady decisions. Our reef tanks are like steering the Titanic. In fact, I think Hadley, England, shared that phrase with me from Sydney Reefing and said, you don't want to just turn 90 degrees like that. You want to make very small adjustments, unless of course there's an iceberg coming, I guess, which is a whole nother situation. But if you're just making fine tuning, very slowly adjust. So when I get that data from the Mastertronic Essential, I will be monitoring it very closely and then analyzing in depth, making lots and lots of decisions to go very slowly before I make changes on my reef tank. But as a data guy, I'm absolutely hanging out to see all of those 5 parameters and test them quite frequently at the start, see how my tank's responding, then dial back on the testing frequency, see how I can go with that stability, and then maybe every now and then I might hone in on one of those 5 elements and just see if I am managing it exactly the way that I expect I am. So any moment now, that Mastertronic Essential is expected to arrive. I have pre-ordered and I cannot wait to get my hands on it. Of course, when it does come, you can be sure that I will do an unboxing, a setup, and a short-term review on how I've gone with the product itself. Now, one other thing I am going to be doing to the Dream Reef Tank much more often and very soon is something that I learnt throughout last year, seeing all of the incredible reef tanks that I saw and getting to see them all across Australia. One common thing I saw across every single spectacular tank was that people were very diligent in blowing the detritus off their rocks and corals very frequently. In fact, some did it every couple of days, but at least once a week. The very good tanks, particularly the grown-in ones like this guy here, did it very often. Now, I've got to say, I do use a turkey baster and I do go in and sort of give the rocks and the corals, particularly things like the Monty caps that have these sort of trapping features there, I do give them a good turkey baste every now and then. But when I say every now and then, I'm probably talking about every 2, maybe 3, maybe even every 4 months. Now, I need to make that a little bit more of a priority, and learning from those who do it successfully, they say basically get yourself a pump. I'm looking at something like an AI Nero and just go in and hold it around your corals and blast them off once a week. Doesn't take long if you can set yourself up with equipment like that. It will help the corals immensely. When the tanks get grown in like this, and it doesn't matter how many wave makers you've got, you still end up with some dead spots where detritus sits and it rots and festers and creates all sorts of issues. That's one of the things I need to make sure that I stay on top of to keep this tank operational and performing at its peak as it can for the next 5 to 10 years. Now, last but not least, on the things that I will do in the short-term future on this tank, and it's probably an interesting one because it's something that I have already done, but I will continue to do probably every 6 months from here on out, and that is do a white bug treatment. Now, I've used quotation marks there because that's how you can find information on it when you search on reefing forums or on Google, whatever it is. Essentially, it is a copepod or a rogue copepod treatment where you get these white bugs that actually irritate your corals. I've got to give a massive shout out to Christian from Signature Corals in the UK who reached out to me and said, hey, not sure if you know, but I've had a look at some of your macro footage of your corals and I can see white bugs on them, which could explain some of the color loss you've been mentioning in your videos. Now, I was going to do a full video on the program and the medications and things like that, but I decided against it in the end because I don't like standing up here and talking about things that I'm not an expert on, and I will put my hand up and say I'm absolutely not an expert on that white bug treatment. I did follow instructions pretty blindly that were given to me from Christian because I have complete and utmost trust in him. But the last thing I wanted to do was get up here and tell you that you should dose this much, this often, and this is what you need to turn on and off. It's just not the kind of false information I want to give out. So if you are interested in the program, I recommend you do your own research. And like I said, if you search on white bug treatment for reef tanks, you'll find out all of the information there and decide whether it's something you want to do on your reef tank. Have a look at what things it has addressed in other people's tanks and whether you need to do it. Always tread carefully when dosing medications into your tank, but I can say for me in my reef tank, it made a massive difference and a pretty quick response too. So it's definitely something that I will monitor and will probably do every 6 months if I see any sort of loss of color, or if I can train my eyes when I look at my own macro footage to spot those white bugs on the corals, I will then jump in and do the treatment. Thankfully, it didn't cause me any side effects. I didn't have any issues with snails. I was worried about my good copepod population following it, but I just made sure I dosed a couple of bottles of copepods from my local fish shop into the tank post the experiment, and now when I clean the glass, I can see thousands of white dots moving all around. Good copepods that are keeping things like my scooter blenny, my mandarins, and even some of the other fish in the tank well and truly fed. So I cannot praise it enough. I think the program, the treatment worked really, really well in my Dream Reef Tank. And like I said, I was going to do a video on it, but just didn't sit right with me professing and showing you how to do a medication in your tank when I don't completely understand the science behind it. So as soon as I felt uncomfortable, I thought, I'm not going to do a how-to. I'm just going to tell you I did it, and that you can do your own research and see if it works for you. But to bring things back into context to this video, it is definitely something I will be doing again on the Dream Reef Tank in probably about 6 months' time. All right, now we get up to the fun part of this video, and this is the category where I talk about things that I might do in the next year to this Dream Reef Tank. And I've got to say, despite having a pretty decent fish load in the system, there are still some fish that I would really, really love to add to this tank. One of which being a magnificent foxface. Now, unfortunately, I can say I did add a juvenile magnificent foxface to this system, and she was absolutely gorgeous. We loved her. My existing foxface, not so much, and eventually bullied her into, unfortunately, meeting her maker. So if I think I need to add a magnificent foxface to this system, I'm gonna need to take this guy out and either hold him somewhere else for a while to get him unstabilized and get him out of his territory owning position, or maybe even swap him in and get get a magnificent foxface and a standard foxface at the same time, introduce them to the tank at the same time, and hopefully they'll get along a little bit better then, because I do like wherever he's gone, he's hiding at my back. My standard foxface, I quite like the color. I like the white and black on their nose, but I do really want a magnificent foxface because, well, they give a different color. That white, black, and sort of maroon color they give is beautiful, but also they are fantastic at eating bubble algae, which here in Australia there is not a lot of alternatives, natural alternatives at least, to bubble algae maintenance. And whilst they're not known to completely decimate it in your tank, they do appear to keep it under control, and that's all I'm really chasing in this system. So magnificent foxface is definitely on my radar for a fish that I want to add to this system. Now, the only reason why I haven't pulled the trigger on it or even committed to doing it in the short-term future is the complexities with that foxface. So it's something that I sort of need the planets to align, and the ability to take this guy out, have 2 new fish, or hold this guy somewhere else for a couple of weeks and then put the 2 fish in together. It's just going to take a few steps to work through how to get that magnificent foxface in this system. Now, as for other fish that I want to add to this system, I have talked about how my blue-green chromis are fairly territorial and super aggressive. Now, I kind of need to do the same thing with these guys. I got to catch them all out, which is going to be no easy feat, let me tell you, and rehome them into a bigger system and add some new blue-green chromis in here that haven't been with me for over 10 years. These guys have been with me a long time. I guess you could say I'm lucky because I don't have the problem of them killing each other off. I don't have that Highlander effect where they wipe each other out. The downside to that is I still have all my blue-green chromis, and while they're not wiping each other out, they are super aggressive to things like anthias and any other sort of small fish that I add into the system. And it makes it super difficult when I want to build up my anthias. I want to get things like a blotched anthea. I'd love to get some wrasse into this system that my chromis have given me a hard time with before. So there are a number of fish that I guess they're being a blocker to, so I do need to rehome these guys, get them out. I do love the blue-green chromis. I love the movement, the color they give. In fact, I think they're a beautiful fish. Their color, I think, is underappreciated, just how gorgeous that tealy blue color to them is, particularly for someone like me who is colorblind with blues and greens. Maybe that's what it is. That's just this magical color in between the two colors I can't really see all that well. But I think they're gorgeous, but I do love other fish as well, and things like a candy striped hogfish, a red and white hogfish I'd love, Borbonius anthea I'd love, some nice wrasse. I really do want to get some wrasse in this system. I'd love a feminist wrasse in here, but I've tried once before and my chromis absolutely decimated it. So decisions will have to be made at some stage with this tank, and these chromis, it's probably going to be a weekend long job catching these guys out of there. Thankfully, they do go into the fish trap pretty quickly, but I suspect once a quarter to a half of them have been caught, the other half are going to be pretty switched on and not into that trap at all. So it's going to be a challenge, but it's something that I will tackle some stage throughout this year, I'm pretty sure, on the Dream Reef Tank. Now, next up, and this is something that I think I could get your help with, is what do I do with the coral in this Dream Reef Tank? Some things in here are going absolutely gangbusters, and as a result, you have corals that will grow and grow. You've got a finite space, finite resources in light and flow. Things will eventually lose out. Now, things like my Monty Cap, my Dustin's cousin, even my red dragon there, Dustin's cousin down here, things like the candy cane there, some of the acros over here are going absolutely berserk, and that is blocking off light and flow and resources, real estate to other corals in the tank. Now, when my good friend Dave popped over the other day and took a 10-second look at the tank, he said, "You got to cut a third of that coral out." Now, instantly I said, "Nah, you're kidding. I hate cutting coral out. I quite like the natural grown in look." However, he did plant a seed, as he's pretty good at doing, and got me thinking and went, maybe there's something to this. Maybe I do need to trim the coral back in this tank. And it then did lead me down a few paths of thinking, do I just let it grow, just let it do its thing? I've got things like Dustin's cousin here about an inch off the surface of the water, and I absolutely love when corals that are mounted that far down in the tank actually breach the water surface. There's something just maybe egotistical about it, I don't know, but I really would like to see that breach the surface. Do I let it go and let that happen? Do I do what Dave suggested and do like about a 30% trim of the coral in here, just bring it back in line? Or do I ravage it? Do I pull most of these corals out? It's sort of staggered, I'm not going to strip it all out in one go, but do I decide one day the red cap's coming out, give it another month, pull out the big blue Dustin's cousin here, give it another month, pull out the red dragon, give it another month, pull out this green stag, get myself a whole new canvas to paint with? I'm not sure. I would love to hear your thoughts, your feedback, your experience in this space, what you think I should do. The idea of having a heap of real estate to work with is super tempting. There's always new corals and things that you want to add to the tank, but real estate becomes a bit of a challenge. And as I've touched on, I would like this tank to be here for another 10 years. So I need to make sure I keep enthusiastic and interested in it. Do I just trim it back to keep the corals in there as healthy as they can be to stop some of the warfare I'm seeing? Or do I stick to my original plan and just let it go? And if there is some casualties as a result of that, so be it. I'm still not sure. I'd love your opinion, your experience. Please do let me know in the comments below, because at this stage, I'm realistically open to any one of those three outcomes, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. All right, now lastly, things on the Dream Reef Tank that may happen in the next 2025. The final one is the unknown. As I touched on at the start of this video, reefing is one of those things that continually evolves, and if you're not moving forward with it, I think you do end up going backwards. So there is quite a possibility that at some stage in 2025, particularly maybe something in the bacterial space, it could be just one of those evolutionary shifts in reef keeping that things we thought we knew before get completely tipped on the head, and all of a sudden we've got a completely different methodology or different approach to reef keeping. So there is absolutely the chance that something major like that could come along, and I will jump on the bandwagon. The last thing like that triggers my memory, and it was all the fad there for a little while, and I do notice it's kind of dropped off the radar a little bit now, where people were deciding rather than trying to keep alkalinity stable, they were going to focus on keeping pH stable and let their alkalinity fluctuate. Because in the wild, they say that the pH and the alkalinity remains stable. So why in our tanks do we just focus on alkalinity and let pH do its thing? I watched that from a distance, I didn't jump on it, and I think the fad's kind of gone away now. Tell me if I'm wrong. If you guys are out there still focusing on pH and not worrying about alkalinity, I'd love to hear. But something like that could come along, and I gotta say, I'm open to ideas and concepts. I do like seeing this hobby evolve. Every time I'd speak to someone that was in the hobby, whether it be 5, 10, 15, 20 or more years ago, they always say they cannot believe how much it's changed. So I'm completely open to the concept and the theory behind changes in this reef keeping game, and I'm never saying never to different approaches and things like that. I will watch them from a distance for a little while, like I did with that pH one, but I'm always interested in what's the next big thing in this game, and I think that's what we all enjoy so much about it. So like I said, I think the next big thing in this game could be bacterial strain testing and identifying. Where that leads, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm super interested and super curious. If you've got any ideas or you've got your ear to the ground of what the next big thing in reefing is, I'd love to hear it. Put it in the comment section down below, and you never know, it could be something we tackle on the Dream Reef Tank in 2025. All right, guys, there you have it. That is the year ahead for the Dream Reef Tank. 2025 promises lots of things that are either about to happen, some things that will definitely happen in the short-term future, and no shortage of things that may or may not happen on the Dream Reef Tank. I'm super excited to see where this year goes and how I can make this tank even better than it already is. I do want to give a massive shout out to my channel members whose names are on screen here now. These guys chip in a couple of dollars each and every month to make these videos possible, and their support completely makes this channel possible. So thank you very much. For everyone else out there, if you are a channel subscriber, thank you so much. If you're not, please consider joining. It takes 2 seconds of your time. It costs absolutely no money whatsoever, unlike our membership program, and it does help the YouTube algorithm promote this video and all of my other videos out to other like-minded reef keepers out there. And the statistics tell me that about 40% of the people that watch my videos are not subscribed, which, I don't know. Like I said, it takes 2 seconds, costs no money. If you could do it, I'd humbly appreciate it if you are not yet subscribed. And again, if you are already a subscriber, thank you for all your support with everything we do on this channel. Now, I don't have anything else to say other than I look forward to bringing you new content each and every week. Same place, same time, and I'll see you then. Till then, guys, stay safe, keep reefing. Cheers, bye.